we have who I call the people queen, Glory Oguegbu. She has Renewable Energy Training Institute, and she's very big on workforce capacity and building innovators and local domestic capacity. So Glory will be taking on your session next. Welcome. I don't know if you have a few words before I proceed to, okay. Okay, thank you. So I know you're very big on moving Africa from being a consumer to being a producer. Your initiatives, a lot of things that you do speak to that objective. What will it take Africa to move being primarily a consumer of solar technologies to being a producer?
Great question. Thank you very much, Ife. Thank you to all the panelists. I'm personally learning a lot from what you have said. Thank you for that very insightful talk as well, Dolabo. I think that solar energy transition has been treated as a charity thing for Africa and for Nigeria. And so you see countries, governments, and leaders of nations in Africa boasting about how much has been deployed, how much megawatts and how much money has gone into the solar sector. You hear them talk about how Africa has 60% of the entire world's solar resources, and this amount of money has gone here. We have helped these people. We have built this solar in this school. Nobody is asking a salient question. There is little seriousness towards building industrial capacity for renewable energy, for solar energies, which we have 60% of the world's best resources. I think we need to stop treating solar like a charity and build a strategy around how we can actually leverage that 60% of solar that we have. A lot of people have seen Africa as a market. This same thing happened in automobiles. So you have second-hand cars in Africa. It's where we dump all of these things that will not be used or that other countries have rejected. The same thing is also happening in solar. And why it really irks me in the wrong way is we see the same thing happen within the oil and gas sector as well, with Africa exporting their raw materials and then importing back the finished products. Sometimes I sit and ask myself, who gave Africa the thinking initially? Like, why did they think that this was the right strategy? Right. And so I really want to do my best to stop that from happening in the energy transition. And so I can't do it alone. And I am trying to train the soldiers who are going to do it. Right. Africa and this whole thing has a history within the climate conversations, climate and sustainability conversation. That's how we started. 2015 was the year when the Sustainable Development Goals was launched in December, Paris Agreement. I lived in Ghana at the time. I knew when it was launched. And so Africa became kind of like the recipient. Africa is already facing climate change impacts. As a result, a lot of governments and people thought that Africa should just try and adapt to the climate change impacts that they're already facing. Whilst the global north, the developed countries, can try and mitigate climate change. Let me tell you the meaning of the two. Mitigation means let us make technologies that will stop producing CO2, which causes climate change. Adaptation means, oh, so sorry, since you're already facing climate impact, let's just be supporting you. We can give you grants if you want. Let's just help you so that you can manage and come out of the climate challenges that you're having. Now, that posture is wrong because it places Africa in that place of pity and, let's just help them. The problem with adaptation fund is that it seems to be developmental. There is no track, there is no accountability. Oh, we can just give you these grants. And so Africa is positioned in a place where they're just waiting and waiting for support. That does not encourage the production mindsets. Now, another thing, I have been a national delegate for Nigeria in climate change negotiations and conference of parties. Sorry, and I've seen this thing that I'm telling you firsthand. It seems as if nobody's really thinking of Africa making their own things, right? So we have these bright sunshine. We also don't have electricity access. Why is nobody saying, how can we make these things ourselves? Isn't that where the value lies? That is where the value lies. And somehow, everybody else wants to sell to us. So, but here's where the problem is, going down to your question. There is no industrial capacity. Everyone is just relaxing. Oh, let's wait and get this grant. If we get this fund, then we can do this. So it's important to develop a plan on how to design, and then, of course, the political will to follow it up, right? The political will to implement that industrial strategy. Do we need to go into schools and teach people that very thing as a subject? If we want Africa to begin manufacturing, teach it as a subject in the schools. So start teaching it inside the schools. Create opportunities for manufacturing so that the people who come out of schools will see what to do with it. The reason why we have this problem is because there aren't opportunities to implement manufacturing. So everybody's looking at installation. Reti started out teaching installations. Right now, we're teaching production because suddenly we are teaching people how to deploy. I don't want to say the white man's product. It's not the white man's product because right now we're also making it. But that's what we've done for years. I don't know if you notice that that's what has happened. Nobody knew when this thing just happened, and it has now become the style. The universities, the schools, institutions, we're all learning how to deploy. We need to learn how to produce. That is what our programs do. Solar Innovators Research Fellowship, training the mind, not just training. Now we work with PhD scholars and just master's degree students, the people who can think. Now, the developed countries or other people, let me get back to climate change. Let me get back to climate because a lot of it is rooted in the climate argument. I am a climate activist, by the way. So, now they sell Africa those products so that they can deal with climate challenges. Why can Africa make the products so that they can deal with the climate challenges? It seems as if, and now one of the promises that was made for the energy transition, I'm rounding up the first question now, is that it presents these massive opportunities for Africa. I have been in a lot of conversations where these things are the topics, right? And people have made the argument that Africa needs these things so that they can have electricity access. It's often very sincere reasons and good reasons. So they can have electricity access, so they can have jobs installing solar, marketing and sales, and all that. But nobody has made the argument that actually producing it will give us more of that. Now, here's what made me decide to put a stop to this thing that is going on globally, is that Africa was promised that with the energy transition. Now, energy transition means let us move to cleaner energy technologies that do not produce CO2 so that we can save the climate. But Africa was now told, we want to encourage you to leave your resources in the ground. Do not mine your oil and gas. Switch to energy so that you can benefit from the opportunities that come from energy transition. You can install solar, your people can get jobs much more than in the oil sector. But the technology transfer and the technical know-how transfer that was promised with the energy transition had not come to Africa. So it looked as if these things were being withheld. These things were being withheld. So Africa is not even being shown the secrets. They're not being told how to make those products. That was one. I have made this argument in a speaking engagement before, where they said, so see, the global north is not giving Africa the technical know-how that was promised with the energy transition. They make the products. I don't agree with that. So what we did is we bring those experts globally to come and teach our African people that same technology secret that they hide. That's what's going on with the Solar Innovators Research Fellowship. Our fellows are learning 3 different types of solar cell and the differences they made. Why do we have thousands of solar panels in Africa and Nigeria that are not optimized for our use? The manufacturers in China and in Europe develop these products for massive manufacturing and sales, for massive transfer. So I'm sorry I took a bit long. Those are the questions. So what it takes is an intentional effort to develop the strategy that helps us transfer capacities, and that has been coming up mostly here. Certifications, create courses, and I like that you're doing that as well, Ivy, with some of the classes you're doing at Electricity Academy. Those are really good. Develop the courses that address the very skills we need. Thank you.
Thank you, Glory. You are truly a climate activist, no doubt. And even your posts, everything, your passion is very clear. Thank you for that very insightful answer. So how do we then strengthen the research to industry? Because you are doing the Solar Innovators and program. How do we strengthen research to industry pipeline within Africa's renewable energy sector?
Okay, great. It's a good question. And for people here on the chat who are listening, if you are a PhD scholar, you're about to do masters, you're in the university, please be intentional about what you're going to research about. Some of the problems come and start like that. That is the foundation. We need to take education seriously in this country, in Nigeria, or if you're listening from any other African country. Stop taking it as, oh, let me just do education, then I can go and hustle and do a skill because there's no job. That is the foundation of problems we're having in Africa. Study something that attacks a question that we are struggling with in the continent. Yes, please. Pick an area of research so that you can look into it. We need to fill that gap in the industry. That has to stop.
You are truly a climate activist, no doubt. And even your posts, everything, your passion is very clear. Thank you for that very insightful answer. So how do we then strengthen the research to industry? Because you are doing the Solar Innovators and program. How do we strengthen research to industry pipeline within Africa's renewable energy sector?
Okay, great. It's a good question. And for people here on the chat who are listening, if you are a PhD scholar, you're about to do masters, you're in the university, please be intentional about what you're going to research about. Some of the problems come and start like that. That is the foundation. We need to take education seriously in this country, in Nigeria, or if you're listening from any other African country. Stop taking it as, oh, let me just do education, then I can go and hustle and do a skill because there's no job. That is the foundation of problems we're having in Africa. Study something that attacks a question that we are struggling with in the continent. Yes, please. Pick an area of research so that you can look into it, so that you can come out with solutions that truly attack a problem that we are facing. That is what we try to do with the Solar Innovators Research Fellowship. We looked for a local solar manufacturing factory and saw all the problems that they are facing from manufacturing solar technology, which it looks as if um, okay, I wanted to say something, but I won't say it anymore. It's important for Africa to make their own things, okay? So we created questions from that local manufacturer's problems. If you are in university, please study something, research something that a real business is facing so that there can be a pipeline of opportunity for you. But people like to research and study other things that are, and then when you come out, there is no opportunity. That was what we did. We looked for a problem and we trained 25 experts for the solution from 15 African countries. Now, when these 25 experts are done with their research, there is a problem that they can solve. So that's how we can move from lab to industry. We need to fill that gap in the center. So there's a gap in the center. Another problem with this is that so many labs, and when I say lab, I mean academic labs. So for research, there are labs that look into some of these things, which solar cell is better for Africa, and which environmental considerations and climate considerations do we have to do so that we can make a solar cell that gives us maximum output, not the Chinese ones that are dumped here in Africa, that are made in Europe and in China. So let us fill that gap. Academic labs often make results from their research that they publish. One of the things that also ache me is stop publishing research for the journals. Put these things in the like go to the factories, implement them in the factories. Hello, like because a lot of academic experts produce this information and the goal is to publish. So thankfully, I am coming from the two sides. I guess that's why I have that look to it. I'm coming from the industry and also the academic side. And I want to bring the two together. We started a local solar manufacturing effort, but it hit a problem along the way. I could clearly see how our factory will not make any money. We can't make money if we keep importing cells. Solar cells cost 35% of the cost.
I've not talked about the building. We have not talked about electricity. We have not talked about other raw materials. We have not talked about the engineers and the staff. So why have we been trained to buy the technology mostly? So that's the problem we're trying to fix. Fill the gap between lab and manufacturing. Manufacturing companies themselves also feel like they don't really need, what the lab is doing. You guys are educational, you're academic, we are industry. There have to be a stop to that, right? Now, what manufacturers do, they create their own R&D inside the factories. Do you understand? Like they are trying to, because there are some things that from the academic side that they may not agree with because it might cause them to wait before they start manufacturing. So they try to bypass some things. They make their own R&D within the industry. That has to stop. Let us work together. Because academic guys have been taught from the educational point of view how this thing will work. Manufacturers also have their own experiences and the things that they looked at. Put the two together and work together. Institutions should do what they ought to do. Academics should do what they ought to do. Manufacturers should do what they ought to do. Don't try to overwhelm the other person with the other person's role, and find the meeting points to work together. That's exactly what the Solar Innovators Research Fellow is doing, working with these schools and labs. Try to show them why working together is the better option. Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria. I think that answers the question on collaboration, and so thank you for that insight. So what, based on, and I like what you said about people going to study courses, and it even applies to businesses as well. Identify where the problem is. Don't just run. And luckily, thankfully for technology and AI, there are so many ways to optimize this without even going through too much stress. So that is really key. But what workforce and skills gap do you think need urgent attention? What workforce and skills gap?
Okay, I think I mentioned that a little bit already as well. Let's see, in the energy transition, move away from installation. Stop teaching installation. And we were also like that, right? There's a lot of demand for it. Unfortunately, it's because of the demand. There is a demand for it. That's why. I think that what has to happen has to really be very, very a root thing. I don't know how to say it again in English. Like it needs to be, the sensitization must start from the root. Installation, we get requests for that regularly by calls, right? But now we've intentionally started creating courses that show people that there are other ways. Again, the question the customer is asking is, but what will I do with the skill when I come out? So you can see where those manufacturing outfits now play a role. You can see where businesses play a role. You can see where other initiatives play a role. Create those initiatives. It's like in electric vehicle. I studied that. It's called a chicken and egg problem, but I think that theme is also applicable to other places. Oh, I'm not going to create the business. I don't have people to employ. Then the people that want to take the course, oh, I can't go and take this course. I don't have what to do. It takes somebody to do it first. And I see that happen within the electric vehicle sector in Nigeria, with people creating charging stations. Other people say, oh, I'm not going to buy an EV and sell an EV because there are no charging stations or there's no electricity. The other one say, oh, I'm not going to create a charging station. There are no EVs to charge in my charging station. But that problem was solved because one bold person created an electric car vehicle changer, and then the cars came, right? We need to take a risk here in Nigeria to build, which is what we're trying to do with the local manufacturing of solar technology. Let's even put it there first. Let's now see how the problems shape itself and you know where to look. Because the opportunity has been put in place, let's see where the problems will go to so that you know what we are solving. I think the question was workforce skills. Good. The workforce skills that need are all those things that we will need to transition from being a consumer to manufacturer. Fabricate solar panels. We're teaching that already now. We need people to learn how to fabricate a solar panel. Some people say, oh, but if they fabricate a solar panel, what would they now do with the knowledge? That's chicken and egg problem again. You'll be surprised what they will do with the knowledge. So teach fabrication, teach certification skills. Governments need to understand how to create certifications that solve these problems, policies around it. There is no policy for local manufacturing, assembly. There is a policy for local assembly in the energy transition plan, but there isn't for any producing, right? So you can see that the government have to take a lead here and create the policy first of all. So they should stop saying, oh, but who, how are we going to, where's the electricity that we're going to use for it? So create it first and then let the activists come up. Things like what electricity lawyer is doing, don't worry, those people will now interpret those policies to what it needs to be. So there has to be that. The other thing that they need to train on is, sorry, I wrote it all down. Okay, that's really it. Mentoring and mentorship around what needs to happen, right? Around the kind of way we have to think, right? Schools need to update themselves. The things that are being taught in universities today are outdated, right? There aren't any jobs for those types of subjects. Please update the content that are being taught in university. Create new courses. Remove all those ones that what are all those things that don't have any jobs for it, right? And see thousands of graduates who do not have jobs. Create a course on fabrication of solar technology as a course. Reti is already doing that. We can support any of those types of efforts. We are doing that with the Solar Innovators Research Fellowship because as we go along in life, we see these new areas come up that knowledge is needed. How AI applies with fabrication of solar cells, how AI applies with solar cell optimization for Africa. What about that? So, and now AI can even help to do all these things. So, let us train for these places where we have seen the gaps. Let us create programs for these portions where we've seen the gaps. Let's not worry about who is going to take it, but there's nobody to take it. Create it first and give yourself 6 months. You can now draw your conclusions after 6 months. Thank you.
Thank you, Glory, for that very insightful session. I think for me, and thankfully you're doing the solar innovation, it
Yeah.
will be good to bridge that gap between industry and academia, which is something you're
Mm.
doing. And even embed business case studies. You have the we only really have one Axuna. So there needs to be more. There needs to be more case study. There needs to be more pilots so that it can move beyond, the silos that is currently being witnessed. And I totally agree that the government needs to be more proactive because the way we are seeing it, technology is outpacing regulation. So if we don't move fast enough, we would really be behind. So thank you so much for your session. I will just move to our next presenter, John Energy. John, welcome.